By the end of the week, 600 representatives of the nation's biggest wholesalers and retailers will be in Newcastle for an Australian first combined conference. If there's one problem facing the fresh produce industry, it's that things are too good. Fine weather has led to bumper crops, shelves are stacked and prices are low, too low. Many producers aren't making returns on their crops.
Unfortunately, we've only got a population of 17 million people. With the great expanse of country that we've got, we are capable with technology today to grow product for 170 million people, and this does create hassles.
The convention is aimed at lifting demand through marketing and export.
Fine weather is predicted for the start of the 92 Spring Carnival, with tomorrow's Cameron meeting being the social event of the racing year. Punting is taken a little less seriously, fashions and fun the order of the day. For those who will invest heavily on the Cameron handicap, last year's winner Quick Score is backing up and is one of the fancied few. Our resident tipster Gary Harley likes Mocha, even though he's drawn barrier 17, with Quick Score and Brawago completing the trifecta. And on Wednesday at the Winfield Newcastle Gold Cup, a real treat for racegoers. The field will be led out by the champion Kenzai, a runner-up in the Cup in 1987. These days, the 10-year-old gelding is living a life of luxury on Elizabeth and Fred Vella's Brankston property, Anvil Park. Still looking a picture, Kenzai dabbles in a little dressage to keep fit, and just to show off, a jump or two to while away the time. Going back to 87, Kenzai had already won the Grafton and Newcastle Cups, and there was one more hurdle to jump. The winner of $1.2 million in prize money is still very much his own man.
He's one of those horses, he's affectionate. You really got to know him. And if you got another horse next to you, he'll soon push the other fella out the road. He's domineering.
And come Wednesday, when he leads this year's field onto the track, the jockey will have to be on his mettle to stop Kenzai joining the race.
Oh, definitely, definitely. If we could change the mine into a nice, quite gentle horse, we'd be right.
A relaxing game of golf with little interest in form helped alleviate the bitter disappointment of Saturday's loss to the Dragons, making it nearly bearable for Mark Glanville and Big Sarge, the thought of Wembley and the World Cup final.
Yeah, it certainly helps with the disappointment of losing, I guess, but, wish we could have won, I guess, but, I'm looking forward to it and keep my fingers crossed, hopefully I can get picked.
Nothing can really mask the pain that defeat in such a match inflicts. 12 months hard work for a 1-point loss in the biggest game of their lives, and the knowledge the season's over. Many firsts have been achieved by this young team, as well as creating an unrivalled support base.
We are very, very unique in the rugby league world, and the full rugby league world knows how unique we are now, and that uniqueness comes with our town, our support, and our football team. We've stood very tall this year. And we've made a lot of people take notice, not our football, but our supporters have taken a lot of credit for that as well. I don't think anyone has seen the football stadium react the way that it did over the last couple of weeks, and we've set the standard for clubs of the future, I'm sure.
For coach David Waite, his first full season at the helm has reaped its share of rewards, but like his players, he's weary.
I'm surrounded by a football team of incredible people and an administration that's totally supportive of the way I've gone about it. But the bottom line is that, I'm fairly tired at the moment, and I'm looking forward to having a few weeks break.
Siraporn Dwyer wasn't expecting to do that for at least 2 weeks, but it seems little Saranya couldn't wait for help. With husband Brian in Wollongong, Siraporn had little choice but to call 000 and wait for the ambulance to arrive. But when paramedic George Brown did, Saranya was well on her way.
Yes, I think Mum had not been telling us that she's been in labour for a while, but when we got there, the job was nearly done, and we just helped Mum along.
Scare with the umbilical cord tied around the baby's neck, Saranya was born on a bedroom floor at just over 9 pounds. And while Mum couldn't be happier with her second child, Dad Brian was making no apologies for being late.
I missed the whole thing. It wasn't a problem at all for me.
Matthew White, NBN News. So obviously did they tell you about the...
At the present rate of funding, it would be 20 years before the Pacific Highway was a divided road along its entire length. The favoured alternative is to have a joint private enterprise government company, Motorway Pacific, build a tollway that parallels the highway. The cost of such an undertaking is estimated at over $5 billion, and it has been suggested that toll could be as high as $50. Mr Murray wouldn't comment on that.
I'm not going to get into the debate on what the tolls may or may not be into the future, but it will be tolled.
But while the tollway option is being considered, the infamous Raleigh Bridge south of Coffs Harbour is to stay, although its approaches will be improved.
Raleigh Bridge is going to have to remain there regardless of whether there's a tollway or not, first of all for access into the area, but it's also part of the alternative route to a tollway.
Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
It seems only yesterday that a fresh-faced youngster from Narrabri hit the headlines as the new superstar of Australian and world tennis. Jason Stoltenberg was the #1 junior in the world, winning the Australian, making the finals of the French and the semis of Wimbledon and the US junior tournaments. That was in 1987, and after a great start to 92, a serious shoulder injury.
It's in my right shoulder here. It's a tear inside the supraspinatus tendon. I think it's a little more difficult because it's inside the tendon. If it's on the surface of the tendon, it'll be a little easy to get to. I think it's probably an overuse injury, and it's something that's plagued me throughout the year. So hopefully now I'm on top of it.
Jason has wins over Chang, Forget and Sanchez, to name just a few, and had worked his way to 69 on the ATP rankings, his highest ever.
After the Australian Open, I went to America and I played a tournament in San Francisco, and I played really well, and I was feeling great. But like I said, my shoulder, that was a tournament, and my shoulder started to give me some trouble. I played with it for quite a while.
With an exploratory operation completed, Jason is hopeful of returning to tournament play before Christmas, but at the moment he's quite happy to relax at the family home at Caves Beach.
I always like to come back to either Narrabri or here or somewhere quiet. I like to do that, and I need to do that to get a rest sometimes. But it's hard to believe 5 years, but hopefully another 5 ahead.
The Rod and Bar product site has been the centre of talk and rumour, some in the industry forecasting major changes threatening the jobs of nearly 4,000 workers. Today, management gave the City of Newcastle a guarantee.
This is a firm, clear decision to keep going with integrated steel making in Newcastle.
In fact, over the next 2 years, BHP will spend an additional $50 million repairing and adding life to both blast furnaces. In the short term, jobs are secure, but numbers will be scaled down over years.
There will be a continuing trend for fewer people working in the steel industry. In our particular case, I can only see that happening through natural attrition.
Rod and Bar Chief Paul Jeans admitted his group is continuing to look at technological improvements for the site, but in the foreseeable future, things would remain the same. More good news for the company with the announcement of a $53 million profit for the steel group for the August quarter. That's an 8% rise on the corresponding period last year. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Aboriginal studies will soon be part of the curriculum at the school, and today's program of dance, art and bush tucker whet the appetite for some to learn. Bush camp setting complete with gunya or shade house set the stage for open-air lessons. An Aboriginal resource room has also been set up and students of Mount Penang's Girrakul School displayed artworks. Visiting VIPs such as Aussie film star Ernie Dingo tuned into the gradually changing face of education.
"500 competitors lined up in the chilly waters of Lake Macquarie for a few hours hard slog. Ahead of them a 1.5 kilometre swim, followed by a 40 kilometre bike ride and topped off with a 10k run. The elite athletes were off first with the rest of the novices a little later. First out of the water clear of the pack was David Williams, and behind him Chris Southwell of Sydney. To the bike leg, and Williams was able to maintain his lead, but the rest of the field were hunting him down with every kilometre, and Southwell closed the gap, as did Jason Medders, and Chris Doherty from Armidale was also making a charge. Back in the field, 1990 female winner Maureen Cummings was dominating her event. As they hit the tar for the final 10 kilometres, Doherty surged to the front and set up a commanding lead that wasn't seriously challenged. 1 hour 49.10 minutes later, Doherty crossed the line, a winner by 2 minutes from Southwell, with Jason Medders of Sydney third. Maureen Cummings maintained her lead to win in a time of 2 hours 02.10. At Shalimar Ski Gardens near Fosterton, Curry, the first round of the Australian Barefoot and Ski Drags and 80-odd competitors turned out for the two-day event. The course is 350 metres in length, and thanks to a radar gun, the quickest boat and skier were clocked at 125 kilometres per hour, travelling the track in around 16 seconds. Late this afternoon, current champion Steve Smith had made yet another final, but he had strong opposition from Gary Adams, Andrew Tompkins and Warren Cornell. The next round is at Taree in October. Female and male bodybuilders were under the spotlight and absolutely loving it. And it's not overnight that you develop the anatomy of these budding champions, rippling and glistening to the crowd's delight. But all the applause and sighs were held for 4 times Mr Australia Mick Schionti, and you wouldn't kick sand in his face.
It was an 8 a.m. hit-off for the 97 students who travelled from as far away as Taree and throughout the Hunter to compete in the one-day tournament. Conditions were near perfect at the Waratah Golf Club at Cockle Creek for students who participated in cadet, junior and team sections. And the field was impressive, with players like Nelson Bay Cherie Burns in the white striped shirt, who plays off a 5 handicap. Cherie and Jack Newton's daughter, Christy, in the black and white, are 2 of only 5 girls who competed in the tournament, a trend organisers are trying to change.
I think girls aren't promoted in golf as much as the boys. They're not encouraged so much by clubs or by schools. We have to really work very hard at promoting the sport with them.
14-year-old Christy is the tournament's current junior title holder and, despite a broken finger, was showing some good form. And finding handy length was Maitland High School student Peter Saxton, eager to better last year's performance of runner-up in the junior boys. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The forum is designed as a conduit for ideas between Hunter Water on the one hand and the concerns and opinions of the public on the other. While Hunter Water was corporatised in January, the organisation is using the forum to keep open the lines of communication with the consumer.
In the old days, our board had much more community representation on it than it does today. We believe that we, as much a community organisation, representing community in many ways as well as being a corporation. So you've got to have both.
Among the representatives at the forum were environmental groups who in the past have questioned some of the corporation's moves, such as dumping sewage sludge into disused coal mines.
Rather than just always be sort of at loggerheads, let's get together, put our heads together around the table and see if we can sort out some of the differences.
The forum was held where the controversial sludge dumping is taking place, the Burwood Beach treatment plant. Sludge disposal was on the agenda, with questions of how the trial was going and when those offensive odours would stop wafting over to nearby Merriweather Heights.
So far, the sludge has gone very much to plan. The only problems we've been having down here has been the smell problems, which we aim to be on top of in the next month or so.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The council was debating a proposed 3-month ban on developments along the coastal peninsula, covering suburbs such as Woy Woy, Umina and Ettalong. It was designed to cover the council for infrastructure costs, while a development control plan was put in place. But to peninsula businesses and residents, that meant losing jobs.
In the building industry alone, 364 jobs was the estimate, purely the building industry. And what they said, add to that another 40 in the peripheral associated industries like real estate and those other areas. So you're talking about 400 jobs.
Mr Tonkin claims that would add up to about $5 million worth of development lost. It was sheer weight of numbers at last night's council meeting that saw the moratorium dropped. More than 250 people packed the chambers in an often fiery debate. At one stage, a councillor walked out of the meeting, complaining he'd been heckled by a member of the gallery.
Personally be insulted by someone in the crowd. I didn't join this council for that.
Gosford Mayor Robert Bell says dropping the moratorium could affect funds for basic facilities and, in the short term, provide a loophole for builders.
What I'm concerned about now is that in the next few months there will be some smart developer people in the community who will put applications in advance of the capacity of the council to make the correct charges. So they will slip through the net.
Matthew White, NBN News.
Kenji Agawa works with ice. Today he had 6 blocks of it, altogether weighing about a tonne. With chainsaw in hand, he carved out a statue for Newcastle's Youth Arts and Skills Festival. Three hours later, it was starting to take shape. Kenji has represented Australia in international ice sculpting competitions. His last effort was a 7.5-tonne mountain lion. While most artwork appreciates with time, Kenji's work is gone in a matter of hours. This piece will be put in cold storage until the Art Mania night at Newcastle Workers Club next week. Within hours of going on display, it'll be water, something that doesn't worry the sculptor.
This size can stay 6 hours for the function, so this is okay.
At first glance, Cathy Schofield appears a typical young mother who, in her younger years, won a string of national and international tennis titles. The difference is Cathy has a rare sarcoma, or cancerous tumour, wrapped around her spinal cord near the base of her neck. It was under control until last year when Cathy fell pregnant with Jessica. The increased estrogen in her blood due to the pregnancy stimulated the tumour's growth, which could leave her a paraplegic or worse, dead. But Jessica was worth it, now giving Cathy reason to fight.
If it was just me, I suppose I could handle it probably even a little bit better, but knowing that she's going to grow up and maybe, it does sort of stick there and you think to yourself, is she going to grow up without you?
To cure the tumour, Cathy needs radiation treatment at a medical centre in America. There, Dr Hamilton says proton beams, traditionally used in atomic physics, are being applied to tumour treatment, replacing conventional X-ray radiation methods which can cause spinal damage. The treatment success rate using conventional radiation methods here in Australia are less than 50%. With the American proton beam, the chances of curing this potentially debilitating, even deadly tumour are increased to between 70 and 90%. The hit year's 8 weeks of treatment cost $90,000. Today, Cathy received the best news she's had for a long time. The federal government has agreed to cover all medical costs plus 2/3 of travelling expenses.
Curtis Park was the venue, the aim to further break down any barrier between blacks and whites by demonstrating to schoolchildren the rich cultural heritage of the Aboriginal race. There were food, ancient weaponry, stories from the Dreamtime and Aboriginal art, including the now rare emu egg carving.
It's a dying art, but it means so much. It brings the spirit out of what the Dreamtime, of what Aboriginal people used to be really when they was getting their messages across, and it's important that younger people now realise that we need to keep this art going.
The Aborigines themselves are also beginning to appreciate that parts of their ancient heritage are in danger of disappearing, no better exemplified than in this display of hunting weapons.
Starting to recognise that those tools mean a lot to us. It helps us to look back at our prehistory and start looking at that. We need to start educating and showing that these tools really meant a lot in our history.
Pat Dixon herself is a Policy and Research Officer with the Department of Local Government, now based in Sydney, but was formerly an Armidale alderman. Pat says the city is streets ahead in bettering race relations through promoting better understanding.
We're looking to a better future, and there's more and more Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people are moving along to making sure that each side is going to be able to work in together to look at a better future.
The historic Yabsley House at Coraki has gained a reprieve until further information is provided. The Heritage Council has requested a conservation report to examine the heritage significance of the house, its physical condition and options for reuse of the house at its present site. Coraki residents will be pleased that the Minister for Planning, Robert Webster, has stepped in and placed a temporary conservation order on Yabsley House. This means the Richmond River Shire Council and the Heritage Council will have 1 year to investigate the future of Yabsley House. Richmond River Shire Council is still awaiting their local environmental plan to be approved by the Minister.
Our LEP has been with the Minister for some time now, and it is actually holding Council's activities up to some degree in other areas than this one. So we will be very pleased to see that LEP come through so that we can actually get on with some of the work that we want to do.
Although Mr Parkinson says the Shire Council and residents are pleased about the temporary conservation order, he is sympathetic to Mr Yabsley's plight.
While Council accepts that this is a heritage item within Coraki, it does place a problem on the owner of the house, which is Mr Michael Yabsley in this instance, that as a private owner he hasn't got the right to utilise his own house.
Michael Yabsley says it's not all over yet.
A decision has to be made as to whether it stays where it is and goes to rack and ruin, which would be a tragedy, which would be a significant heritage loss, or whether it can be moved to a better location and where it can be looked after and treated as an item of heritage.
Mr Yabsley will meet the Heritage Council request for a conservation plan for the building.
It's been requested and that will be done, notwithstanding the fact that it happens at considerable cost.
The conservation order has opened yet another chapter in the Yabsley House saga. Annie Casey, NBN News.
Rubbing down me when you get nerves on. Remember? Yeah, mate. You're going to give us him, don't you? Want to start running around to interconnect? They're already at
It's fires like this one at Vales Point Power Station in June that make staff safety training vital. Today at Koala Park, more than 150 power station staff were put through their paces in the 25th annual Fire Teams competition. Designed to increase the experience of staff, teams were judged on 4 events, with local fire brigade officers keeping score. Home team Munmora took the overall honours, with Vales Point winning the individual team trophy. Matthew White, NBN News.
At the basketball stadium late this afternoon, Dozier sat with daughter Casey, contemplating a once-in-a-lifetime chance. To be invited to trial after being out of the US for 2 years, well, that's something special. As Terry himself put it, when it comes to the NBA, it's a case of out of sight, out of mind.
It is a rare thing that they look for players in Australia.
Dozier's led the way for Newcastle in what has been a topsy-turvy NBL year. The Flying Falcon suffered a back injury mid-season. His return to the court coincided with Newcastle's return to the winners list. On Saturday night, the Falcons clashed with the mighty Sydney Kings. It could well be Terry Dozier's last game in Newcastle colours. How does he feel about leaving Australia?
If I have to give up a beautiful country like this, it'll be for that league.
Terry will join what they call New York's Veterans Camp on October 9th. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
For isolated farming communities, helicopter rescue remains the fastest way to get medical help and retrieve a patient during an emergency. But that time advantage can be quickly lost if the aircrew can't find the patient. 71-year-old farmer Wal Butler is resting in John Hunter Hospital today. He was hurt in a tractor accident near Wallangat, west of Foster on Tuesday. The quick thinking of his wife Peg saved valuable time as the Westpac rescue helicopter sought their location.
I put our white car under the power lines, and thinking along those lines, I felt that I could help them more by putting a sheet out in the section which was the only part that they could land the copter.
Peg Butler stayed by the phone, guiding the helicopter into the scene.
Oh, John, look, I can hear the helicopter, but it's not coming west enough.
Newcastle Westpac 3, I have the residents online at the moment. Can you go further west?
And I've got a car standing near where we are, and I've got a white rug on the grass.
Paramedics praised Mrs. Butler's presence of mind, saying she set an example to anyone living in an isolated area.
People can furnish information, pertinent landmarks, hills, trees that are dangerous for the aircraft, and also power lines. If we can get around that problem, we can get there a lot quicker.
While Butler is on the road to recovery thanks to his wife's quick thinking and the emergency crews who knew just where to go.
They were just so dedicated, and immediately not a second was wasted.
Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Shortland Electricity says the minister got it wrong. John Hannaford says Shortland will have to pay out $20 million in accrued sick leave. Not so, according to Dennis Nichols.
The reality is that that $20 million liability really only comes into play if Shortland cease operations tomorrow and everybody's got to be paid out.
The actual 92 payout figure quoted by Shortland is just over $800,000, accounting for almost 7,000 lost working days. The $20 million is tied up in working funds. If Shortland was forced to borrow that money, Mr Nichols says tariffs would increase, works programs would decrease. The decision to pay accrued sick leave dates back to days of poor wages and superannuation. According to Mr Nichols,
it's quite obvious that it's part of this government's ongoing attack on the wages and working conditions of workers of New South Wales.
Newcastle City Council's untaken sick leave liability, as at the 31st of December 91, stands at more than $5 million. Council currently employs 985 people. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.